Good Wednesday morning, December 14th, 2022. That's right, it's been 1 year since I completed my Appalachian Trail southbound hike. And a lot of people have asked me, what was the gear that you used? So I decided I'd make a video, and since it's cold out, it's December, we're in Maine, but I had conditions pretty similar to this, and I still have all the gear that I used last year, so let's dive into what's in my bag. And before I do that, I'm gonna throw on some layers real quick. Since we're talking layers, figured I'd already tell you what I got on. On top of my head is just a synthetic beanie that I got on top of Mount Washington. That was when I was crossing the presidentials in a rainstorm. Check that video out. On my hands are these Timberland gloves that have the ability to kind of touch my cell phone. So, you know, I took a lot of pictures on my cell phone. And these have held up pretty good. They're nothing fancy, just something I had before the hike. Underneath is a merino long sleeve that has thumb holes. On top of that is my Under Armour short sleeve shirt, just a tech synthetic polyester. And then on top of that is this Terramar fleece that I got down in Virginia when I realized I needed some more layers. Below is the matching pair of long sleeve underlayers and my hiking shorts, which are Under Armour short. And then on top of my bag, I got my sit pad always. And I usually would keep a quick grab layer. So in this case, now that I put those on, I feel a lot better. This may not be the lightest weight thing, but I already owned it before I left for the trail, and it's made of a Gore-Tex windstopper material. So this was the outer jacket that you've seen me wear on the lot of the southern end of my hike towards the colder months. And then down below is a pair of Marmot waterproof pants. It's just their fabric, and I like these because they have these zippers that go up here, so I could stop and throw these pants on without having to take my shoes off, which was great. And I forgot to mention, I always kept my Sawyer filter in my pocket close to me so that it wouldn't freeze. I never had an issue with it, but I also was very mindful of not letting it get cold ever. So yeah, plan ahead and crap hopefully doesn't happen. Fingers crossed. All right, so I got my outer layers on, and I just wanted to kind of give you a show of what I brought with me. I always had this Chipper Recycler Nemo pad, sit pad, that I used often. I always had these very heavy, and I finally changed them out, but these were what I used. They're a Croc all-terrain shoe. They were my camp shoe, and I never wanted to use any communal shower without having these on. So basically anytime on the AT that I took a shower anywhere, I was wearing these because I just didn't want to use the floor that any other hikers wear. I used a Sawyer squeeze bag, and in tandem with a small scoop, which I would use at like standing waters or creeks. So I would kind of scoop up the water, pour it into my squeeze bag, and then filter. And I always had a 1 liter and a 1.5 liter. I don't have a 1.5 liter with me to show, but I always had one of these and a 1.5 liter. And then I carried my tent poles and stakes on the outside. That's for my tarp tent. And then my cat hole trowel in my outer pocket. Also in my outer pocket, I would keep my Lightheart Gear rain jacket, which was really good at just trapping heat as well at the end of the night. I always was a clean freak, so wet wipes. I always brought these before I would really get into my tent. I would always wipe my feet off. Keeping your feet clean and in good condition is one of the best things you can do. I carried a little tripod, although I didn't use it too much. It was pretty lightweight, but I used this with my GoPro. And toilet paper, and I have a little small squirt bottle, mist bottle of rubbing alcohol that I would always use you know, anytime I needed to go use that. And then I kept the bag that my Sawyer Squeeze came with. This would be like my dirty clothes bag. So throughout the summer, I cycled my clothes to keep me feeling more comfortable, and I would put my dirty clothes in this to keep them corralled together and then shoved in the very, very bottom part of this outer pocket so that dirty clothes stayed outside, clean clothes stayed inside. The only other things on the outside I want to mention is, well, this is a Hyperlite North Rim 3400 pack that is bomb proof. This is a woven Dyneema. It's a lot less crinkly than the other type of white Dyneema. I was testing out a certain feature about the fabric. I don't remember what, but when I was done the hike, I had to send this back to Hyperlite, and they did their research and development with it, and I was able to get it back to me, so that was awesome. My AT tag, you know, traveled with me since Monson all the way to Springer. I always kept my GoPro in here. This solely was where my GoPro lived, and it kept it decently protected. And then I would always in the morning put all of my snacks for the day lived in this side pocket, so I pretty much just didn't stop until lunch, and then wouldn't stop again until dinner, and everything else I needed would come out of here. I always kept a little bottle of rubbing alcohol. This is a little good luck charm, my Smiles for Miles bracelet that broke in New Hampshire, but I carried it in this outer pouch the entire way with me. And then this cell phone pocket is also something that Hyperlite makes. I use this all the time. It was a perfect little holster if I wanted to grab my cell phone and take a photo. So that's the bag. So we've already went over what's outside my bag. Let's go what's inside my bag. Typically this space either had nothing like now, or it would be carrying my extra layers that I quickly wanted to grab but keep them protected on the inside. But on top was always my tent. I had this poncho that I was testing out with Hyperlite that just kind of filled some of the voids, but I used their pod system, which maximized all the space in here. The top pod was always my ditty bag. Go over all these things in a minute. Then my food bag, which would change in volume as the week would go on, but when I would leave town, this thing would be full. Got my clothes bag. I usually would leave my puffy kind of loose in here as well to kind of take up some of the odd space. I always carried my AT guide, and I had my air pad, Thermarest Neo Air, the large size, laid in a square. And then I had my quilt. This is the 20-degree quilt from Hyperlite that they just recently released, but I was testing it. It's 1,000 fill down, and sorry, I misspoke. This is the 40-degree quilt. They did just release the 20 and the 40, but I was testing the 40-degree on the AT. My bag's all empty, everything's strewn about. Now let's make some sense out of this. Well, that didn't take too long. This is my tent, the Tarp Tent Double Rainbow LI. I'll have a video link. I showed a little more about it up here, but it's a freestanding tent, so I was able to use my trekking poles, especially in situations when the ground was hard or maybe frozen. It has a carbon fiber pole that suspends the outside of the tent, and another pole right here that props up and gives you headspace. Got two vestibules, and I would always set it up so that there was a head end and a foot end, so I kept all my dirty nasty stuff down here and my clean stuff up here. I'm just a clean freak, you know. And look at this, my sit pad is my entry mat, so I could just kneel down when I wanted to get in. And let's jump inside. Hey, we're inside now. I got all my stuff laid out. You can see I got a pretty decent amount of space. I'm 6 feet tall. I'm sitting up in the middle, and there's enough space to get all my gear in here, which was a huge bonus on rainy days when I would get in and I'd you know, just threw all my junk in and got in and could zip up and just be in here. I wanted to show you what's in some of my pods. This is my ditty bag, or all my unessentials. So even though I carry a lightweight bag and some lightweight gear, I also carry some extra niceties and things, so judge me if you will. Got my Sea to Summit camp pillow, which I needed to sleep. I'm a back sleeper. Got my stove, Vargo pot with a Crux light, just thread-on stove, nothing too fancy. Something I had picked up at Monson to trade out for my old jet boil, which was really heavy. One of my luxuries was this Eno Sub 6 hammock, which was my camp chair. I used it to stretch out. It was a nice thing when you'd be in an area like this where there's some trees, and you know, you could set up and get your feet back. And 10 ounces for this setup, and yeah, judge me. I carried a bear line, even though, judge me on this, there weren't many times where I had to use it. There would either be a bear box, or there was just other methods that I didn't need to use this, so I didn't often. I always carried extra Sawyer bags after I had a Sawyer bag fail on me. These weigh very minimal, and I figured if someone else needed one, I'd have an extra. It's water. Also, towards the end, I would carry some of these toe warmers, just cause. And then I have my electronics bag and my medical bag, and I'm gonna open those up and kind of go over what I brought. Here's my medical bag. Just a Hyperlite drawstring bag. These held up really good and kept my stuff dry. I always carried some emergency packets for me or someone else. I had some Dyneema patch kits just for repairs and such. I started carrying some water filter tablets after my water filter break as just a, oh crap, you know, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, everything. Some Dr. Bronner's with a little bit of tape around it in case I needed it. Some Aquaphor was great for any chafing or chapped lips. If my feet were wet and I wanted to kind of moisturize them after a day. I have a sewing needle tucked in this little piece of cardboard, and this pack of Z-Pax thread for patches and repairs. A little mini tool that I didn't really have to use too much, but you know, in case you need to get a splinter out or something. Carried an emergency blanket, again for you never know. Couple large band-aids. At one point I was getting some wear on my heel here, so I pretty much was having to wear a band-aid every single day to prevent the shoe from cutting into that, but that kept me moving, so extra band-aids, Neosporin, and trusty vitamin I and daily multivitamins. But wait, there's more. Electronics. Another Hyperlite bag. Battery pack. I think this is like a 1300 amp hour with 2 ports to charge from. Not the lightest, but you need batteries when you're out there. I ended up getting this one as a 3-prong flip away little cube. I think it's made Phillips. It was cheap on Amazon, but it worked good to charge 3 things and fit into a lot of outlets I ran into. This is my Actic Core by Petzl. It's got a rechargeable battery, but it also accepts AAA batteries. So I have, voila! So I had some USB cords, an extra GoPro battery, 3 AAAs, so if the battery in this died or failed, I would have a headlamp, and some extra headphone pieces. And then the piece I was most embarrassed about, but often got questions about, was this tiny little piece of plastic, 3 ounces. It's got a light around the top that actually gets really bright, and it's a little pump. So it would fill my air mattress at the end of the night, and it kept all my nasty sweat from living in here. So I was always embarrassed to use it because it made a lot of noise, but when people would ask what it was and found out, they always wanted it for themselves. So If you're on the fence, maybe get one. What's left? Oh yeah. So in another pod, I always kept a second pair of gloves in case throughout the day these would get sweaty and wet. I would have a dry pair to wear at night. I had a backup mid layer for the same reason. I always carried an extra pair of hiking shorts and shirt. These also kind of doubled as like my sleep clothes if I would get gross, but kind of towards the end of the winter or towards the end of my hike, it was so cold that I really didn't need to change these things out as much because I wasn't really perspiring that much. But I recommend having them. They made me feel comfortable, and judge me. I always would clean my feet like I'm doing now. It's had a habit. I don't bring my feet into my tent unless they're clean and dry. I don't bring my hiking shoes into my tent for the same reason. But these are an alpaca wool pair of socks that I always kept for sleep only, and highly recommend doing that. I had an additional set of hiking socks, so I would usually go 4 to 5 days before going into a town. So 2 days on these pair, 2 days on these pair, and usually by 2 days these heel cups are pretty well formed from your sweat and you want another pair of socks. And then this is just an additional, these are kind of a mid layer. They're like a fleece pant that I had from skiing years and years ago, but this would be what I would wear underneath these rain pants before I would go to bed on really cold nights. And that's all my clothes aside from my LL Bean 850 down puffy that basically as well was only something I would wear in camp. I didn't want to get it sweaty, but yeah. And then last but not least is my food. So one quick tip about the food, I kept my tent in this extra large roll top bag from Hyperlite. So my tent's out, it doesn't need to be in a bag. I would put my food into this as my bear bag. It's roll top, it's very durable, it's waterproof. So this was like a good hack to have a bag that serves two purposes. So during the day it's housing my tent, and at night it's housing my food. So, but again, Hyperlite pod, and let's see if I can do this one-handed. Almost. And this is what I used to have for food. This is about a day's worth of food, kind of laid out. So my morning would be a Pop-Tart and some breakfast essentials with milk powder and some coffee powder. So this breakfast was about 1,000 calories and had a lot of nutrition in it. Then my second breakfast almost always was a Cliff Bar and a meat stick. Good amount of protein, carbs, sugars. My lunch would be a tortilla with some meat, tuna, a mayo packet, a mustard packet to add some more flavor and calories. And then in lieu of fruit snacks, I have these, but I would usually have some kind of like fruit snack, fruit leather with my lunch as a dessert. Then in the afternoon, I would have another meat stick, probably a Snickers bar or some type of candy bar to keep me going. Dinner most often would be rehydrated, either potatoes, most often rice, and I would throw that. All these would be in a freezer bag. Those would go into my repack. I would boil my water. So whenever I cooked, all I ever did was boil water, and all my food would get made in the plastic bag that then got thrown away. So my smells were really trapped down. I would always add 2 packets of meat to my dinners. So that was a lot of carbs, a lot of sodium, a lot of protein. And then whatever may be left in the day, a couple energy drinks. Sometimes I would use like a flavor packet with my water, especially in like the mid-Atlantic states. The water's kind of iffy tasting. And yeah, other random snacks I may pick up in town that would shift from now and then, but essentially that's kind of my daily amount of food. And this is what it's like to be a thru hiker. This is my stuff. These are the things that I equip myself to go walking for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And for me, this stuff worked out pretty darn good. I hope this is helpful. I mean, I know it's helpful for me to look at what other people did to see what their comfort level was. I know I liked having a little bit of extra just in case. I figured instead of deciding to not carry a ½ pound and feel better about that, I'd rather carry a ½ pound of things like emergency, extra vitamins, extra cleanliness products, extra clothing. Again, argue with me, but I think I'd rather be a stronger hiker and know that I'm more prepared for more situations than have the absolute lightest kit that I can and be requiring on everything to go as planned. If it doesn't go as planned, it's a lot harder to remedy your situation if you don't have any extra supplies with you. And if you happen upon a person who maybe is even less prepared than you may be, you're able to help someone out. So that's my kit. I'm glad you stuck through to the end of this video. I have more things I plan on doing, but this is something I'd wanted to do, and I hope it helps you. So thanks for watching, and safe hikes. Peace.